How you doing, Hollywood?
I don't understand how I'm Hollywood, but all right.
Well, you got the you have the blog. How old's the blog now? 30-some years. Started in the 70s.
It started in 2003. So this is
you got
16th year.
16 years. Does very well. Columnist for Forum Communications. Now a podcast that is so hot. Your ears are almost on fire when you're listening to it. You're going Hollywood, baby.
Wow. Hey, there's a lot of flattery going on. Do you need a loan or something? Do you need some money? What's going on here?
I'm kissing up because, I'm just curious if you were at Safari Fuels and Minot at all recently.
No, that was not me. I don't play the lottery, which I always regret.
All that back.
I always regret when they announce the big winner, because I never play the lottery and I always think I'm so smart. And then they announce the winner and I'm like spending the money in my mind, like, what would I spend $2 million on? And turns out a lot of things, but I didn't play, so there's you can't win if you don't play, right? Isn't that what they say?
That's the tag. Yeah, somebody might not pull the $2 million Powerball winner, man.
Yeah.
What is this?
I'm hoping it's somebody I know.
I bought my 3-year-old some Captain Underpants underwear this weekend. Took it out of the package, and the briefs have a cape attached. Now Cooper's butt has a cape, and he thinks he's the coolest kid in daycare. What's the cape? The cape is actually hooked to the rear end.
It's like Velcroed on. It's like Velcroed onto the waistband. So it's the cutest thing you've ever seen.
Yes.
We were at Target. I was getting him some new clothes, and he needed some new underwear, and he saw Captain Underpants, right? So he was Captain Underpants?
I
guess it's a cartoon. I'm not that familiar with it, but he was all excited about it. So I got it, taking it out. It had a cape off the back, so I put him on him this morning. We draped the cape out of the back of his pants, and when I left daycare, he was bent over, waving his cape in the air, and all the other little boys were running around, and he had a big grin on his face. He was the coolest kid at daycare today.
They were jealous.
They were jealous because Cooper's butt had a cape. My 3-year-old.
How big is this cape? Does it hang like down to the floor?
It's no, not that far. It's probably down to tops of his thighs or whatever. But it's hilarious. He thinks it's the funniest thing ever.
Boy, you went after old Jim Shaw in his article over the weekend. Bigotry is alive and well in Bismarck. We'll get to that in a second. I already got somebody calling in wants to talk about school land. So before we get to Shaw's article and what your rebut was, what is this I'm hearing? Do we have lawmakers that are trying to hide some of our money from us?
Well,
understanding this right?
Well, that was on the podcast today, and I talked with Lieutenant Governor Brent Sadford, and actually Governor Burgum last week. I don't know if you saw the article, but he called it disingenuous. But what's going on is we know how this works, right, with the budget forecasts, where when our lawmakers it's a little complicated, so I want to make sure people understand. When our lawmakers budget, they're not spending money that they have in the bank. What they are doing is they are basing budgets on what the state is expected to collect. So we actually hire these like analytics firms. Moody's Analytics is what the executive branch uses. The legislature they do their own second. They didn't used to, but things got so bad with these forecasts not being accurate during the oil boom years. The legislature kind of gets their own second opinion. And then what happens is based on these forecasts, the lawmakers, like the appropriations committees, adopt what they kind of take the assumptions and say, well, this is how much money we think we're going to have to spend, and then they budget based on that. So it's kind of like looking ahead, like this is the way the state does it. So it's kind of like saying, well, my paycheck is $1,000 every 2 weeks. And so, I expect I'm going to, based on that, I can spend X amount of money on the gas bill and X amount of money on lights and all that stuff. So that's what they're doing. They're going through this process. Now it gets really complicated because it's not just revenues. It's not just, we think we're going to collect this much in sales taxes and this much in income taxes. It's also revenue from the various funds. And what Governor Burgum is saying, because remember, he has proposed some spending of legacy fund revenues, right?
Yeah,
now this is not actual legacy fund deposits. This is interest that the legacy fund has earned. Right. Yeah. So he spends some of that money. In fact, I think he budgeted like $300 million. Some of it's the Teddy Roosevelt Library, and a lot of people have strong feelings about that one way and the other. Yep. There's it was the UAS like a system for tracking the drone thing, kind of a air traffic tracking thing for that, and some other things that he spent out of the legacy fund. And so we're having a debate about this. And this is where it gets important. The legislature earlier this year adopted a forecast that included a constitutionally required transfer of $300 million from the legacy fund's earnings into the general fund. That was the forecast earlier this year. The forecast that was just released recently, earlier this month, which is the last forecast of the session, what the legislators adopted said there was only going to be $100 million available. And so what Governor Burgum is saying is they're essentially hiding $200 million.
Yeah, I would say there's $200 million missing.
And he's not wrong about this. Now, I say that. A lot of people out there say, well, good, they shouldn't spend it. Well, okay, maybe you're right, and we could have a debate. Should we spend it on the library? Should we spend it on something else? Should we not spend it at all? Those are all valid positions to have. I think the problem the governor has is the money exists. Why are we hiding it? Why are we cooking the books to make it look like it doesn't exist?
Yeah, if it's there, it's there.
If we're gonna have a debate over spending, and you don't want to spend the money, then fine, make that argument. But let's not cook the books so that the money just looks like it's not existing, which is what Lieutenant Governor Brent Sanford said on today's podcast as well.
Hey, you find that at SayThingBlog.com. Charles, you're up on a Jay Thomas show. It says here on my screen you want something about school land.
Yeah, I mean this is an 11-year-old problem, and Kelly Smith has been trying to address this in 2009 and 2011, and she's been rebutted by the tax commissioner, the attorney general's office, that these funds going into the SIP account were legal, that there didn't need to be this constitutionally required amount going into the Common School Lands Trust, and I think it was the budget stabilization. These are all constitutional. It's very simple. It's very there's no ambiguity. They have to put that money back. That's misappropriated. And I'm going to make some news here right now. I think it's more than the $247 million. I think it's closer to $500 million because the 50% that they're giving to the natives, this is all on the Fort Berthold reservation. They're charging an extraction tax and giving 50% of it to the Native Americans. Well, they can give that to them, but they still have to take that constitutionally protected amount out of that portion also. No one's even talking about that. But there's going to be a lawsuit if they don't. I can't believe that the Senate proposed a bill without proposing to put the money back. So that goes to show you that they just are not concerned about what their constitutional requirement is. And if you want to look at all the savings in the accounts in North Dakota, there's almost $20 billion.
Yeah, we got
That's $106,000 per family of four.
We got
in savings accounts.
Yeah, we got a ton of money. Rob, have you heard anything about this?
I interviewed Jody Smith from the Department of Trust Lands not that long ago, and she actually addressed that specifically before I could even ask her about it. She said everything is to do. The error that Charles is talking about is the treasurer was not for the state's portion of oil tax revenues collected. She was not taking out of that money for the buckets like the Common Schools Trust Fund, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's what everybody's talking about, this $247 million shortfall. The treasurer says she went to the attorney general's office and got like an email or somebody there gave her some advice that just keep doing what you're doing. She says that they sought legislation clarifying this in past sessions and it got voted down. Anyway, it wasn't being done. The Trust Lands now says it should have been done. Some of the interested parties like North Dakota United, which represents the state's teachers, since we're talking about the Common Schools Trust Fund. I interviewed actually Nick Archuleta, the head of the North Dakota United. They're saying they think the money needs to be made whole. Governor Burgum's office is saying, they think the funds need to be made whole. So I think there's a lot of people feel that way. There are lawmakers who don't feel that way, as evidenced by the fact that what Charles references, the legislation coming forward, which doesn't make the funds whole. Now, where I'm not sure if Charles is, in fact, I don't know if he's right or not. I could tell you when I interviewed Jody Smith from North Dakota Department of Trust Lands, she told me that the portion that went to the tribes was not affected at all. That wasn't part of this. It was only the state's portion of that. And in fact, it was the recent tax agreement that we reached with the three affiliated tribes, the Fort Berthold reservations, on oil tax collections. That's the reason why this was discovered in the first place, is the state was busy hammering out a new tax agreement with the tribe. And, basically this problem reared its head. So that's how we got. Now, what Burgum's office, who, by the way, are in favor of repaying the money, They're saying, no, it's not. Burgum's administration is saying, no, it doesn't affect the tribes part. Now, Charles says otherwise. I haven't looked at the law, but I can tell you everybody I've talked to, no, I've not. Charles is the only person I've heard saying that the tribes side should be paid back as well.
All right, let me take a break. Come back. If you want to jump in, 293-9000, toll-free 1-888-970-9310. We come back, Rob. You kind of took Jim Shaw to the tool shed from his article.
Well, yeah,
but I'm going to say, Jim makes some points, but there's something, and you caught it right away, that's what your article addresses. It's amazing how, and what this has to do with, folks, is legislation. I believe it's House Bill 1441.
That was one of them, yeah. The anti-discrimination.
Yeah, for LGBT community.
Right.
And Jim Shaw decides that he's going to point out all these Republicans who he considers bigotry is alive and well in Bismarck. But he doesn't seem to mention in his article the Democrats who also voted against it. It's just the nasty Republicans. We'll touch on that when we come back on the Jay Thomas Show.
His leader.
Yeah, I'm rocking out a Monday, baby. Fight the good fight. Rob Ford, savingblog.com. Columnist for Communications. And, of course, his podcast, Plain Talk. That's where he goes in there. He doesn't put any makeup or anything on. He just does it plain. No pancake makeup, none of that stuff for the cameras. Rob just goes in there, skin naked, gets it done, baby.
Well, there's no cameras, so that helps when I'm not wearing pants.
Rob, why will the lawmakers in the state of North Dakota, why will they not do these protective rights for gays, lesbians, LGBT community?
Well, so some of them don't like gay people.
Well,
I think that's just. I mean, when you and I don't want to say all of them. But there is a faction. I don't think they're a majority. But there is a faction there that just don't like gay people that much, or have constituencies that don't like gay people that much, and so are voting that way. And they don't hide it that much. You can hear them talk about it on the floor and in their floor speeches. I can tell you, in social settings, they're even more candid about it. It's not great. So that's that situation. I think others have, as I have in the past. Sort of an ideological. I struggle with the idea of telling business owners who they have to serve in the first place. I'm willing to concede that battle's been lost, back when, we had lunch counters refusing to serve black people. I mean, that's where a lot of these laws came from in the first place. And, maybe that's not the hill that we want to die on. I don't know. I can understand an ideological objection to say, listen, everybody has a right to choose who they want to associate themselves with, even if you or I might not like the way they make that decision. I think some of the lawmakers feel that way as well.
Am I off base? I mean, you're more in touch with these lawmakers than I am. I mean, you talk to them on a regular basis. Yeah, I really think the problem. I think people they've come to accept gay marriage, people that are gay. I think people are not on board with transgender people. As they are with people who are gay. I think that's part of it. They just will not accept that. And because of that, that's why this thing constantly gets shot down. But I don't know. Maybe I'm off base.
I think it's not as clear cut, and we're running into some real problems where we have somebody who is biologically male, but now identifying as a female and winning like a powerlifting competition, right? Is that fair?
That's not.
We have issues. I mean, if we're gonna pass anti-discrimination legislation, we have issues like, what about our criminal justice system, right? Are we gonna put somebody who identifies is biologically male but identifies as female, and we're gonna put them in the women's prison? Are we ready for that?
I don't think we are.
There's a lot of questions there about the trans side of that. Now, getting to the issue of Jim Shaw's column, he makes these sort of blanket statements that everybody who voted against this is a bigot. And my point was, I pointed out that there were two anti-discrimination bills, one in the Senate, one in the House. The one in the Senate was Democratic-backed. It included trans people. That was the one Democrats wanted to pass, and it failed. Now, there was another one introduced by Representative Mary Johnson, Republican from Fargo. Her bill did not include trans people, and her her intent was to try to find the common ground. Let's try to find the areas where
find a start somewhere.
Right. Maybe it's not 100% of what you want. Maybe it's 80% of what you want. But hey, it's progress, right?
Yep.
That bill failed too, and it had Democrats voting against it. Josh Boucher, North Dakota's only first openly gay lawmaker, voted against it. Representative Ruth Buffalo, who's become sort of a left-wing media darling, she voted against it. In fact, the entire Democratic leadership, of the Democratic caucus in the House voted against that bill.
And that's where I have a problem with Jim's article is in this article. He's talking about how out of touch the legislature is on this issue. And he goes on, and I agree with him to some points on that. But in his article, he's only calling out Republicans because he's just the guy does not like. Now, Jim, if you're listening, you want to call and defend, you can call in, Jim. But he's not calling out Josh Boucher and these other Dems that voted against this. He's only calling out the Republicans. So he's trying to make it look like it's just the Republicans that don't want this.
I have been calling out Republicans on gay rights issues for years. I mean, I could go back. I have posts on the blog that had literally thousands of comments because I was supporting gay marriage and getting bashed all over the place by Republicans.
I always said, and I'd get hit hard with it too. It's like what effect does gay marriage have on your marriage? It should have no effect on it at all.
My point in writing, and I got some backlash because the headline was provocative. I asked if North Dakota's first openly gay lawmaker was an anti-gay bigot, and I understand that's a provocative headline. My point was that there are lots of reasons to vote against these bills. They don't necessarily all have to do with bigotry. And by the way, if we're going to criticize Republicans for not passing these bills, how about we criticize Democrats for letting the perfect be the enemy of the good when they could have maybe supported the bill and got 80% of what they wanted, but they opposed that too. So if
they want it all.
If you're going to complain about the lack of progress, then complain about that too.
Yeah, it's on both sides. All right, Rob, next Plains talk. What do you got? You got to go quickly.
I'm going to talk with a lady from Energy Transfer Partners about Dakota Access Pipeline 3 years later.
All right, you can find that at saythingblog.com. Rob Port, appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you.
All right, we're out of here. Take a break. Come back more of the Jay Thomas Show.